Hey, everybody. Welcome to this session here at our CVBS Summit. We are Data and AI, Expressways to the Future. And, trying to stick to the overall theme of CVS this year under the community of commercial. So about collaboration and forward momentum, and AI is clearly a driver in that forward momentum. And so we've got a great group of folks here today, all in the auto industry, and we're going to be diving in and talking about all things AI, and then hopefully with a focus on the commercial vehicle industry. So let's start off with a few intros. So my name is Kevin Kinell. I'll be your moderator on the panel here today. I work at Work Truck Solutions. I'm the CTO, and I oversee the product and engineering side of Work Truck Solutions, and I've been with the company since the early days, and so I've seen the company grow, and we're a company that deals a lot with the very specific minutia of data about commercial vehicles. So when we talk about AI, you can imagine that there's a lot of areas that we can benefit to better surface, to better process, and understand all the unique data and use cases about commercial vehicles. So I'm going to just quickly go around the room and let everybody introduce themselves and speak a little bit to your company and background. I'll go ahead and start with you, Jose.
My name's Jose Puente. I'm the co-founder of a company called Motiva Ventures. We are a software and services business that basically delivers and enables new business models for mobility. I've been in the auto industry in general since 2008, initially working with Cox Automotive for about 14 years. I've done a variety of different digital startups. I've worked with a very large bank doing financing for auto. I'm very excited to participate on this panel.
Right on. Thanks, Jose. Eric, pass it to you.
My name's Eric Foster. I've been in tech for the last 20 years. Most recently, I'm with BZDev. We focus on agentic AI for sales, marketing, and customer service. Prior to that, I was 7 years in commercial fintech, focused very much in the commercial vehicle space. Worked very closely with Kevin during that time in developing fintech solutions for Convoy and for dealers. Prior to that, I was in cloud services for business with a company called J2 Global.
All right, thanks, Eric. And Jeff, you can close out the intros here for us.
Right on. My name is Jeff Risner. I'm a co-founder and partner with Trupropel, which is a software development company that focuses exclusively in automotive and data. I've been around a while, so about 40 years in the car business. Started in college selling cars. Family had an auction and spent some time with CarMax, with Lithium Motors. Founded a company called The Appraisal Lane, which we sold to Reynolds and Reynolds in 2020. And have been started off buying and selling cars and focused on asset management and consulting with dealers and helping them make good decisions. And I've spent the last 12 years in technology. And so I guess I'm an old school car guy that's turned into a tech weenie.
Yeah, I heard you're liking the technology side.
Yeah. No, I like taking I like applying all the history and experience and insights to how can technology help people disseminate all that and make their businesses better. Yeah,
perfect. Well, you'll be our resident auto experience from all aspects here today. And so, okay, trying to stick to the commercial vehicle industry and tying in AI. Jose, I thought you had a good topic around just perspectives of using AI in the commercial vehicle space. And there's a few different categories that can apply to. So, from the fleet side to the OEM to finance and insurance to just like I was talking about with Work Truck Solutions, being able to have better normalized and structured data about all these commercial vehicles. So let's kick it off with you. So what, give us in this audience, your perspective on AI in the commercial vehicle space.
Sure. Well, just to put things in context, I think AI has 10,000 different meanings depending on who's looking at it. The way I look at it in terms of, from a practical standpoint, to me, AI today is simply a tool that assists in making data actionable. And so when I think about it from the perspective of a commercial truck owner, I think about it from the traditional phase of I need a vehicle, so I'm shopping, I'm purchasing a vehicle, then I own the vehicle, and then I dispose of the vehicle. So across the spectrum, AI can apply value across the board. On the purchasing side, it's how do I know which is the right type of vehicle? Where can I get it? What are the attributes that I need to have on my vehicle? Which are the best tax incentives that are offered for this type of vehicle? Which is the one that's going to cost me the least amount of money on maintenance? Where I can optimize my insurance. Then when I get into the ownership side, it's driver management, it's fuel efficiency management, it's asset management. Making sure that I'm optimizing the utilization of my vehicle as much as possible to generate the most amount of efficiency, because I don't want to have my trucks just parked. On the OEM and on the dealer side, and even on the upfitter side, it's understanding where the demand is likely to come from for the specific types of vehicles from a geographic perspective, and then also with some level of predictability, also tracking and leveraging AI to use that into CRM applications, customer lifecycle management, not just from when I sell them the car as a lead, but when I manage them all the way through the cycle end to end. And then on the bank side and the financing side, it's also leveraging a lot of data that is available today that I think banks are more interested in considering, which is based on lending money based on credit caps. And historically, it's based on financials. More and more banks are more open to looking at providing financing options based on the performance of the fleet of the customer, and saying, look, this guy's got 5 trucks. He's already capped out on credit. I can't give him any more, but the guy's got enough business to fill up 8 trucks. So if you can take some of the historical performance data and projecting with data, how much more business he could do if you could just loan him, enough for 2 or 3 more trucks. It's not about credit, it's about capacity. And so it actually helps the fleet owner grow their business in a healthy way. And I'm seeing that banks are more and more inclined to look at that as a value. And then on the insurance side as well, obviously tracking, the vehicle, the asset, how it's being used, where it's being used, types of projects, etc. You can also, track on residual management and things like that. So you can get better about pricing insurance. So it's about efficiency, it's about better insights into what you should have, and it's about creating optimized utilization on the asset.
Well, you covered a lot of these different topics. Let me dive in on a couple. So Eric, on the financing side, and you've got a good fintech background there. One of my thoughts was like how all the data, different types of data, about that capacity of the business and things like that. So outside of just their credit history, like do you see that data coming in to help it? In AI playing a role in how it gets that information or processes it?
Yeah, for quite some time, we were using machine learning as well as AI in order to be able to score customer applications, looking at attributes like engagement as well as credit attributes in order to determine which leads were prioritized, which applications were prioritized, and where in the life cycle ultimately they slotted. So for quite some time, we've been using AI for that. More recently, AI is now being utilized to capture data early in the process. So it's to a large extent now replacing marketing automation as a way by which to engage customers and continue to push them through the top of the funnel.
Jeff, going back to the fleet owner, and it seems like that's an audience here that is directly impacted in these things that we're talking about. You talked about there's other benefits to the fleet owner when it comes to AI, route optimization, and things like that. Is that other areas that you've seen being impacted with AI here?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think just really looking at just an overarching fleet management. I mean, you can get into predictive maintenance and scheduling so that you can do that at the time that's most efficient, where it's not disruptive to your business. Whatever your day job is for that asset or that piece of equipment. There's all sorts of stuff like monitoring for driver safety. And then that has some impact because if you do that in the right way, you can actually get discounts on insurance, which goes right to the bottom line. You've got load matching and asset utilization. I mean, you have an asset, so if you can use it as efficiently and as often as possible, then you're going to generate more revenue off that asset, which actually is an expense and it's a depreciating asset. So I think there's a lot of different things that can help every single day. Utilizing to what Jose said, it's all about data and getting a set of actionable intelligence, but you can get many sets of actionable intelligence out of a large set of data about a single asset. And so, one of the things that we focus on is visualization that lays on top of a set of data, so that you can make a bunch of different decisions that impact your business and how you run it every day.
Yeah, I think to the audience that is a good thought, right? Because it seems overwhelming, and so that visualization that you put on top of it, seems key as a way to start getting started and how to what data should I be looking at? Does anybody on the panel have different visualizations, services or tools or platforms that they've been using that they think have helped in that?
Well, I'll speak a little bit about it. I think on my side, we've got a couple of engineers that basically create our own AI. So basically take open source AI engines, and it's really AI is only as good as the data that's accessing. So some of the things can become a little bit more nebulous, like on choosing the right vehicle. Those would create you would need to leverage some third-party data sets to combine them all and then be able to put that into an actionable AI tool. But when it comes to fleet management, if you have telematics installed in your truck, that becomes a lot easier because all that data is already collected. So then it's just parsing what it is that you want, and it becomes much easier to actually make something tangible out of that kind of data. On the financing side, things that you can leverage are, obviously your historical earnings, your historical expense reports. So that's going to require, good accounting and bookkeeping, but also things like, contracts that you have with projects that you have. So you could say, look, I've got this customer. I'm talking about like financing, for example. You could say, I've got a contract with this customer, and this is how much he's paying me, and I've got a 3-year contract. Those are kind of data sets that aren't necessarily available, but you would need to build them in. So I think, it's kind of a broad answer to your question. I don't think there's a one size fits all or one solution for everything here. As a fleet operator, what would be most actionable to me would be data that comes from my actual vehicle. Data that I generate, like I said, on the financing side, if I'm very good about keeping my records in my contracts, I can leverage that into whatever financing, data modeling the financing institutions are going to use. And when it comes to OEMs and dealers, that's really leveraging all of your CRM and keeping track of what your customers are buying, historically what they're buying, and then tracking historically how frequently they actually buy. If you're also leveraging the service and maintenance, the mileage, and when did you do the service and all that kind of stuff in a proactive way as opposed to incidentally or reactively, then at the dealership, then you can leverage some AI to be much more engaging with your customer and create better value.
Yeah, so I think one of the things you hit on was just like what tools our dealers are already using or fleet customers are already using, and are those tools, providing commercial vehicle intelligence or some kind of visualization of that data, because you need a place to start, and you need something that maybe you're already familiar in or already living in. Eric, you guys build out a lot of custom tools to try and start building out some of that. I don't know if you can speak to that level of like, how, are there tools or, your experience, like where does somebody go to start seeing that visualization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As Jose was saying, it all starts with the data you have at your fingertips, right? So, for instance, inventory data, like on Convoy, or inventory data on a dealer's website, can be hugely valuable when you combine it with AI in terms of making informed business decisions. oftentimes I think we as human beings struggle to assess a lot of data, prioritize that data, and make a good cost-benefit analysis. AI, as long as it has access to the data, doesn't really struggle with that so much. And so we built things like AI-powered search engines that can quickly look through inventory based on certain criteria, make determinations on what inventory available fits the criteria best, and then can go down the path of cost benefit, based on multiple variables: distance, age, features, benefits, and other things. And then finally can help you make a decision. Do I pay cash for this asset, or am I best off financing it? And it can help you quickly go through that decision tree and provide you probably with better information than you would be able to gather on it.
Well, I think this is a good start into a very broad topic, and I think just to take a step back and for our audience, to put a little more definition around AI. We've talked about it a little bit here, that it has a few different meanings. And Jeff, I thought, you from being in the industry for a long period of time, is AI something new, or do you feel like there's a shift recently into this being a new thing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, at the highest level, AI has been around. I think the concept was first kind of broached in the 50s. So we're moving into 70 years, and there's kind of been this kind of hype cycle where, something new happens, and then we go back and we figure it out and we use it for a while. I mean, in the 50s, we talked about it. In the 60s or 70s, you could kind of play chess and do some basic kind of math. And then when you get into the I want to say it's, I'm sorry, I made some notes. So, in the 80s, it was just like simple decision trees to help kind of with a process or a workflow. And then in the 90s, we had Deep Blue with IBM, and they beat the Russian chess champion. And then they made headline news. And then it just kind of leveled off until somewhere in the 2010, 2015 range, and it's just taken off. As we've gotten faster chips with more capacity to compute, and they can start to kind of daisy chain all this stuff and get it going faster. But, AI is really just an umbrella that sits over the top of everything. I mean, artificial intelligence is basically machines doing things that normally require HI, which is human intelligence. And so, as we get larger and larger sets of data, and we start to kind of program and direct the machines, as it were, they can start to infer more from that data faster, that give us, to quote Jose, actionable intelligence about what we do in our daily lives. And, so within AI, there's, I don't know, anybody, depending on who you talk to, there's anywhere from 5 to 15 different kind of specialized verticals or areas, from, machine learning to deep learning to natural language processing to, computer vision for facial recognition and stuff like that, robotics. We're getting, automated driving cars, kind of expert systems and decision-making that, really help in the fintech space, where you get a credit application, you got a lot of data points, and the machine ranks it and then kind of auto-generates a response in real time, maybe from 15 different banks at the same time, and then force ranks the 3 to 5 best options to put in front of the consumer, so that they figure out how much they have to spend and how much a dealer figures out how much he can sell. There's just, it's all consuming. So I think we see with a lot of our clients, they come in and they think they want AI for whatever we're building. It doesn't matter. And it has absolutely no basis in any kind of insights they have, other than they've just heard AI. I mean, it's like, blockchain, 8 or 9 years ago, and nobody really hears much about blockchain. You go through this just vicious hype cycle of that's it. Investors are putting money in it. They're going crazy. And then it kind of levels off. But AI has been around for 50, 60, 70 years. And this is the latest cycle. And we've made advances with kind of the machines, and we're getting better. But I think we're just at the beginning. And we'll see, we'll continue to have this evolution. And it's going to impact our daily lives and commercial trucks. Real quick, I've spent my whole career in the kind of medium and light duty vehicles and passenger vehicle space, as far as vehicle valuation for both acquisition and disposition. And what I can tell you about when I first met Work Truck Solutions in Catherine was when we had the appraisal line, and we were serving all these franchise dealers on how to value trade-ins and all the variables and valuation and geography and all that sort of stuff. And we would invariably get a Dodge store, and then all of a sudden he's looking at, an Isuzu or a Navistar or a Kenworth, and we don't know what the hell that's worth. And it's kind of this massive region of darkness because of the upfit. You can have an Isuzu and there's 200 upfitters that put something on that Isuzu, which you could probably get a baseline depreciation curve from Black Book or Chrome or one of the other providers on what the cab and chassis is worth, but then you put an $80,000 upfit on it and all bets are off. So that's when I first came across, connected with you guys, Kevin, was talking to Catherine about, hey, could we take some of our opportunities to help dealers and put them in your ecosystem and get educated and really give them some good insights and let them be fully informed before they took capital risk on that potential trade-in.
Yeah, I like that topic a lot. It's definitely close to home with Work Truck Solutions. And, how do you think, I do agree that we're at an early stage on that. And I think about the uniqueness of use cases at a business level can be very specific and about the makeup of the vehicle. So when it comes time to that trade-in side of things, how does somebody, take first steps and, what are the resources, you've seen in the past? Like, how did that evaluation happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's like like I was saying earlier, you really almost have two depreciation curves, right? You've got one for the cab and chassis and one for the upfit. And they've also might have been maintained differently. I mean, you go in and you get your oil changed and your filters and all the stuff checked up on the vehicle, but how did you maintain all the hydraulics on the upfit, or, the box, or is it reseated, or is the refrigeration, on the truck? There's so many variables, beyond, mileage and service history and vehicle history and accident history, geography. Are you in the Rust Belt? Is it a 4-year-old car that's just been throwing salt up underneath it? What has that done to all the different lines that power the upfit? Off the drivetrain. I mean, there's just a lot of different things that come into play when you're evaluating a vehicle, and they're not Camrys, they're not Accords, they're not Malibus, and so I think anytime you can narrow the region of darkness and access more data sets to give you more insights, you're going to be closer than you were before you had those. And I think that's in the commercial space. I'm going to give you guys a shameless plug. I think your data set is kind of without peer when it comes to marrying all of that information and getting closer to one set of actionable intelligence, so that then you can make an educated guess. Because every time somebody brings you a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old commercial vehicle and you're trying to sell them a new one, that's your core business. You make good margin selling new ones. You make great margin, servicing them. But now they brought you a challenge. What do I do with this? There's a lot less data in that remarketing space than there is what the supply is on the new car side. You've got all these pools and access to all the retail listings, and you can kind of get pretty close to, okay, here's MSRP, here's the upfit, here's what we're doing. We know what the discounts are, but all bets are off when it's 5 years old. You don't know who drove it, where they drove it, what region it's in, how it's been maintained. And so I think that AI could be a really powerful tool in figuring out what is the heat map, what are the supply, what's the demand, what's the retail side. Start to plug in and look at the gaps and the standard deviations when you go to remarket it, and then you can kind of back in what you feel comfortable putting in that vehicle when you're taking it out on trade, which can make or break a deal. Sorry, that was a little long-winded.
What Jeff is talking about there, I mean, that is truly like the holy grail, especially, from my background in commercial finance, is once we have a true understanding of what the resale value is of that vehicle, in the hands of a dealership, that becomes a powerful tool to re-engage your customers earlier and almost engage them to start a buying cycle before they were even prepared to do so. With viable intelligence that actually creates a very compelling business case for doing it.
Spot on. I mean, so I can tell you, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but with you guys, I was fortunate enough to be, part of I was a founding associate at CarMax. And so we believed in transparency and, we made cash offers on cars, whether you're going to buy a car from us or not. I can tell you that was really painful when people were lined up outside the door and they were curious. They just wanted a real number. And what consumers thirst for is information. Because when somebody goes to a dealership, whether it's commercial truck or light duty vehicle, there's two endpoints in that negotiation or communication. One is in the automotive industry and one isn't. And so one has all the information and the power and the other doesn't. And so that creates this kind of tension. And if you can figure out how to break down and disseminate and educate the consumer on what they're looking at, what they're about to do, what the upside is, what the downside is, they're much more likely to move forward in a transaction based on trust and transparency and education. If you tell them a number and then why it's that number, it's like triple the conversion rate, because now they can hang their hat on that. So
and the repeat business and commercial is huge. So you build that trust, just like you're saying, Jeff, and all of a sudden you have a customer for life. It's amazing the dividends that being able to do that transparently and accurately will pay.
Absolutely.
Jose, any fleet perspective on that? Also,
Well, the way I see the market and the way that, as I mentioned before the call, I've been spending some time in Europe, and the dynamics are a little bit different here in terms of the space in general. But there is definitely a move towards fleet as a service, and especially now with the uncertainty on shifting market dynamics and pricing, tariffs and all these things, tax incentives, emissions, regulations that can't come and go. It creates even more layers of complexity for a potential truck owner that they have to consider. And these things are all fundamental to their bottom line, because it's not like they're making an enormous margin on their business. So there is sort of like an emergent trend towards, not for 100% of the market, but certainly for a segment of it, for fleet as a service. And everything that was just mentioned, I think aligns with that, where you can abstract a lot of this very complex, like the complexities of which vehicle do I need and what are the options and who has it and who can build it for me, and what permits and all that stuff, down to now layering on all these other new things that are coming up. You can just tell the guy, look, I've got the truck you need and I can get it for you, and here's what your monthly payment is, and I've got multi-lifecycle financing for you. I think it just opens up another opportunity, not only for the customer, but for the retailer and for the OEM. Because at the end of the day, these are very static. I mean, it's not like the commercial truck space has an indefinite, huge growth potential in terms of not 10,000 new commercial truck owners launching every year. So you really want to maximize and harvest as much as possible every single customer that you have, and figure out all the tools and things that you need to make sure that that customer sees you as a one-stop shop. They don't need to go somewhere else. It's
Welcome to AI and talking abroad. I think we have Jose in Spain right now.
yeah. We'll give him a sec to see if he comes back, but all right. Well, let's jump, Jeff. We've been talking about the used vehicle valuations here a little bit, and commercial vehicles being unique. Just to kind of close out that topic, what do you see changing as we go forward here? We talked a little bit about how it's kind of been done historically and the different values of the chassis versus the body, but I don't know if you were to put your hat on of it in 5 years, what's going to be different about valuing these vehicles, and is AI playing a big influence on that?
No, I think so. I mean, anytime you're taking capital risk on a used vehicle, it all starts with the call of the car. And that's when I was giving you your shameless plug earlier. You guys have the most robust set of data to accurately at least understand what you started with, which narrows the region of darkness in the valuation trail And then you start to go into, how's it been used? What is the vehicle history? What's the service history? But, referencing, I don't know if it was Eric or Jose, talking about telematics. I mean, there's a lot of smart vehicles, particularly in the commercial space now. So they can give you a lot of that information. It can get into a database that just lets you be more informed on how this asset has been maintained and kind of serviced, which give you a greater confidence, which, gives you a higher valuation. Because if you've got confidence in how it's been maintained and taken care of, and historically we haven't seen access to those records at scale in the commercial space. So I think that's the biggest piece. We're getting more information in real time from commercial fleets than we ever have before. And I think that's just going to continue as more new equipment that is kind of smart or connected gets on the road and gets in service. You're tracking drivers through mobile apps, that are attached to vehicles. You're tracking vehicles that are communicating and letting you know when, we've got the ODB2 readers and all the sort of things that are giving us all this information about this big industrial piece of equipment that's on the road and being worked every day. Most of these pieces of equipment are rolling. They're not commuting to the office and then parking for 8 hours and then going back home. They're rolling every day. So it's really a vital piece of information and kind of figuring out, what do I want to do with this asset? And it really gets into estimating if there's a black hole in service. You have to kind of err on the side of nothing's been done. So I've got to bet that I'm going to have some repairs that are in excess of what I might bet or estimate if I had that complete picture. And I think so completing the picture and allowing people to be accurate, not high or low, but accurate about the valuation of that vehicle. And then having that data to also share with the consumer and educate them and make them feel comfortable with where you're coming from. I think you're going to see smoother transactions.
Yeah, and I really came back to the topic just to give you a chance to shamelessly plug our data one more time.
Perfect.
So thanks for helping me with that. Eric, the smoother transactions, right? So that's got to resonate on the fintech side of things.
I mean, fair market value is ultimately what drives the success or failure of a lender, right? If they're not accurately estimating the fair market value of an asset, at some point the defaults will come and really ultimately remain the business. So as time progresses, data being cultivated by companies such as yourselves, combined with good AI, combined with even blockchain, as blockchain continues to come into its own, is ultimately going to make determining that fair market value that much easier and that much quicker. And soon, ultimately, we might be able to buy and sell used assets on arrival, which would be kind of the holy grail in this case.
And welcome back, Jose. Glad you're able to rejoin us. I wanted to come back to what it's easy to jump all around as we keep talking. But Jeff, you had talked a little bit about just the hype of AI was more being what's you're seeing right now in the buzzword side of things. So Jose, your thoughts on that? I know you've got a background in our in startup world and things like that. So maybe speak a little bit to us on are you seeing startups and the influence of AI on that, and is it playing off of just the buzzword, or is there specific technology you're seeing that if it's built from the foundation up, might make a difference on a company? Anyway, I'll just start opening the door to you talking about that.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, any new startup today is going to start with that it's at its foundation. But at the same time, you're seeing companies that are starting, and then 2 weeks later, another company comes out that's doing 10x what these other guys were doing. So I think as a pure play AI startup, I think that it's going to be challenging. However, I think that the ones that have the most to gain are already established companies that already have all the data that they need. Because it's the average person. AI is going into ChatGPT and asking a random question, and all of a sudden it's like magic. but that doesn't work necessarily in a practical sense for a business with very specific decisions. So, like for example, the AI has the capacity today where I could be a commercial truck owner and have a business, and I could say, well, I've got this project that they want me to have. I have dump trucks and I have all these loads that I need to do. I can take all the data and I can run an AI model, and it'll tell me what's the optimal, trucks that I need. How many do I need? How many loads am I going to have? How many drivers? What are the right hours? Like I can schedule and do the right optimization for that. So you can do things like that. You can even do things that could be even super creative if you wanted to where you could say, just tell me about yourself as a fleet customer, and I can tell you without you doing a search, here's the exact truck you need and here's where you can get it. So AI has a lot of power to be able to do that. It's just not at that level of practical use today. So I think you see startups that are coming out more generalist. But I think that if you focus in the category, and I agree with what you said earlier about it being hyper-focused as work truck in this space, the better work truck can be at harvesting all the relevant data, then work truck in and of itself, just by the nature of what it's doing, becomes an incumbent AI powerhouse for the segment in ways that other AI engines would have to ingest data to function, or compete. So I think it isn't so much to me around the capabilities around engineering AI solutions. It's around the data and the purity of the data and the structuring of that data that can unlock the power of AI.
Yes, it's an interesting thought of like one of the keys is the data. And so like from like a true, AI startup base, you're not starting your company with, years of data. And it's kind of an interesting thought around like, how do companies that have that data, make that shift? So, in the auto industry and areas that do, a lot of us have, extensive years worth of vehicle data. How do you think, what's your tip, I guess, from like seeing startups and them trying to solve these problems, and then there's larger, existing companies. How do you make that shift to start leveraging that data with AI?
I think it all
bigger.
Yeah, I think it all starts with creating problem statements. My business would be better if I had this. My customer's business would be better if I could give them these answers. And then I always like to start with sort of like the point of view of the customer and say, I need this, and then do it across the life cycle and say, what data do I have that could help him answer that question? And then you'll know based on the data that you have and how you've structured it, whether it's successful and easy to solve that problem or not. If it isn't and you think it's relevant, then you need to figure out where you can get that additional data. Sometimes, in the auto industry specifically, because you have so many different levels of data, you've got shopper data, you've got customer data from a business registration standpoint, you've got vehicle purchasing history that you can get from vehicle records. There's just lots of data that you can get. There's data that you can buy from, credit agencies. I mean, there's so much data that you can get. It's just really figuring out what are the core problems that I need to solve for my customer. And then what data do I have? What else do I need to add to this data to actually make that answer more robust for this customer? And then once I've answered that question at that phase, is there another question that I need to answer? And the more you start building upon that, then the easier and the better and the more sticky the solution becomes, because then it's sort of like a self-fulfilling thing. I don't have to go somewhere else because you guys are giving me all the answers that I need. I think, and I agree with what's been said, I think that work truck, based on the focus on the category, is way ahead of the industry because you've already solved a lot of complex parts, which go to what we just said, which is you have the data around the assets, which is a huge thing to start with. Like where is the truck that I need and where do I get it? And whether it's new or used, still probably a lot more to be done. But if you start filling up all that data set around the customer side and then you start doing some matching, then the power that you have for the market isn't just hey, I'm simplifying the way that people can interact with your inventory. I'm actually connecting you with people that are in market that need these trucks and already have, and you have what they're looking for, and I'm helping you do more of a matchmaking. So, you know, if I was coming into the industry, that's the way I would be looking at it. As a generalist AI, I think it'd be kind of tough. I have seen some groups that are trying to do AI for the auto space, but again, I think if you're trying to go broad in the auto space, it's going to be really tough if you don't have access to data. You know, I'll just say one last thing. You know, we're working at Cox. Cox, as you know, has an enormous amount of data. I mean, multiple companies touching literally every dealer in the country. You know, in a variety of different points, and that data, you know, anybody from the outside could look at it and go, "That's enviable." But when you think about this, was done through a series of acquisitions, and the structuring of that data is not the best. And so while you have it, it's going to take a while to make it really truly actionable, because you have to rationalize that. You know, a customer that's got an account on AutoTrader may be a customer on Manheim, but they don't have the same ID. So you see what I'm saying? So you don't get that full view. So data is not generic. You know, data has to be structured, and there has to be some strategy and discipline around it. Otherwise, AI is going to do a lot of hallucination.
No, that's a great point, Jose. In that, you know, we've got a project where we bring in data from 35 different sources for the client, and we have to normalize that data and get it into standardize it so that once it goes into one pool, it all kind of works well together. And I think to your point, you know, with Cox and the acquisitions is a great example. You acquire this massive pile of data, but it doesn't really, you know, it's like oil and water with the other 42 sets of data. So there's so much work that goes into getting these massive piles of data into one kind of common set, where that then you can start to kind of infer stuff from that data and put it together where you can glean some information in that actionable intelligence you referred to earlier.
One thing that we were able to do when I did this startup, a company called FlexDrive is the one that we sold to Lyft. I had 6 data scientists on my team, and we basically built, as close as I found anywhere, was a real-time vehicle residual value estimator. But we had access to all the Cox data. We had data from 19 different sources, but 50% of the data we were getting from third parties. Like we realized that we had to get data from the warranty companies, because they had predictive data on, well, what warranty do you want to sell on this Nissan Sentra? Because at 30,000 miles, 70% of them are going to have a transmission problem. So it's like, it's like data can become like one goes to another, and it can become infinite in terms of how much data, and then you have to give it weight. What percentage of value? So it's very complicated. AI can solve a lot of things. I think for very structured data businesses, like I think it's very valuable for financial, and I think it's very valuable for healthcare and probably for insurance. The rest of the world is in different levels of structure, and I think auto is probably one of the most unstructured data pools that exist. I mean, you've got repair shops, you've got parts shops. I mean, it's so much data that trying to wrap your head around it, I think it's going to be really complicated. And I think you made the point earlier around blockchain. I know a lot of people that try to do blockchain in auto. Incredibly complicated. Sure, that would go a long way, but now you got to get everybody on board with that. So anyway, then you got guys that repair their own trucks. So how do you track that? So I just think that's why I said for this type of business, my experience tells me that what I need to look at is, what are the activities of the customer? What are the activities of the retailer and the OEM? And what are the activities of the upfitter? And then what are the activities of the relevant parties, which is insurance and finance? And then what are the questions they're going to be asking? And what data do I possess that can help their business be better so I can be the preferred partner? And if I can just start with that baseline, then organically over time, I'll start ingesting and getting more data and figuring out, where I can really optimize to the maximum benefit.
Yeah, I'll play off a little bit of that, Jose. Just the uniqueness of the data, on the commercial side, the person who repairs their own vehicle reminds me of just like all the auxiliary equipment that gets added. Like a dealership's gonna stock something a little bit maybe more base or generic. I'll just take a service body truck, for example, and but the end buyer might add an auxiliary fuel tank, or depending on where they're traveling to, or there's so many different things that could be added to the vehicle by so many different players. So that it might be a business savvy enough to have their own machine shop to do some of that, or they're going back to the upfitter who installed the service body on the truck, and that data is not necessarily getting shared back to the dealer or to the OEM or whoever. So that the stages of the sort of the history of that vehicle is sort of all over the place.
Yeah.
Eric, on this topic of like the niche pieces of this industry, and we talked about this in a couple different ways. Just that AI startups, being more niche is good, and analyzes data in niche ways, or third parties that have niche data, and tying that to the financial side of things. Did you see that playing out, that like it's easier to focus in on certain niches when it comes to like the financing side, or having the right model?
I definitely think the organizations that will succeed at the startup level are those that are solving real problems for real customers, and that those problems are specific enough, but also broad enough to where there's a large enough market for that, right? And one of the things, and not taking anything away from anything Jose or Jeff have said, because I absolutely think they're right in terms of the extreme level, having good data and large quantities of good data are ultimately going to be key to truly realizing the full potential of AI. But even just on a basic level, I think dealerships that are our customers, on a very basic level, have an information dissemination problem within their organizations. I think between sales, between finance, between service, there is an information dissemination problem, and you don't need a huge data set to solve that problem. What you need is to be able to empower and provide a superpower to each of those individuals in each of those departments to be able to know what is happening within their ecosystem, and to be able to provide intelligible responses to their customers in a timely fashion. And I think right now, with where we're at with AI and with the data available at our fingertips, that's possible. And that there are products and services available that can ultimately solve that problem for customers. And quite honestly, if we were just to solve that for these dealerships, the dealerships that solve it are going to be in a much better and a more competitive position than the ones that don't. I think that's the opportunity right now for a startup who wants to actually try to do something real with AI.
There we go, audience. So you got your startup idea right here. Sorry, Jeff, what were you going to say?
No, I think that's spot on. I mean, that's actually an incredible point. I think dealerships today, have somewhere between 7 and 12 pieces of software that they use to run their business. And they all touch different parts of the transaction or different parts in the life cycle of the vehicle, but there's no deep integration. You might have an integration where it pushes 3 accounting fields over, but you have no context on why that decision was made, who was involved, and who's being held accountable. And to your point, Eric, if you have a question about it later, or you want to respond to a customer that said, hey, why did you guys do this, or when? You have no idea. You just know that there's a PO number and a check number and an amount. And that's all you know, unless you happen to be standing next to the guy that's over parts and service in the back that did whatever they did, which is highly unlikely if you're talking to a consumer either on the phone or out front. So that I think there's actually conflict built into the ecosystem in that none of those vendors is incentivized to be open and transparent with all of the other vendors to provide a better experience for both their client and their client's client. So there's inherently conflict in that ecosystem to give everybody, and the result is everybody gets something less than what they should, because it's their vehicle, their interaction, their data, and they ought to be able to utilize it and be transparent with it and have access to it in real time to provide a better experience for the people they're serving.
And the sad part, it seems like that gets prioritized over the customer.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is it really only 7 different applications they have?
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Um, I do want to just mention to the audience, we will have some time here to ask the panel some questions. I think you've seen that there's some great input here on getting started on where it could go and kind of a wide variety of areas in AI. So I'll encourage anybody that's listening in to feel free to put in some questions, and we'll let our panel answer those. On the topic of tips for like the audience, one thing I didn't prompt you guys on this too much, but just in daily life, it doesn't have to necessarily be to the commercial industry. Are there what's your AI service or tool that you've used that that's helped you, or that you think could help the audience? Or we'll just give you each a chance to just kind of share your favorite AI tool or service or tip. So Eric, I'll start with you. It looks like you already got a thought in your head.
It's quite impressive right now. So anything generative AI related, if you're not dabbling and playing with all of them and trying to figure out how you can answer questions better or solve problems better using them, I strongly encourage everyone to play with them. A year ago, we would have all said the future was OpenAI and ChatGPT. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there are several good LLMs out there right now, and each of them competing for ultimately what will be the future. So keeping abreast to all that. But really, I think the most exciting thing happening in AI is what's happening with agentic AI. Autonomous artificial intelligence is going to be the future. It's here now. And if you're not aware of it or utilizing it, start. Because it's going to be the thing that ultimately, I think, changes the world.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as in your daily life, I mean, if you're on Spotify or Netflix or whatever, you have recommendations, and I get some really cool playlists every week that I had no idea I needed to listen to that, but amazingly, I listen to it, and they're batting about 75%, which is kind of crazy. So maybe I'm
Are
just
you training the
vanilla or
model,
boring.
Jeff? Are you responding and giving it the thumbs up and thumbs down, or?
Yeah, for sure, and it just feeds it. It gets better and better. In my past life at the appraisal lane, we used machine learning as we appraised vehicles, and we went in and identified certain aspects of that vehicle. The machine would start to learn and then identify certain pictures, and so that all of our submissions had the first 12 pictures ordered identically, and it just made it more efficient for our people to consume the CR. And we could just go faster because it was by rote, and so there's just in your Gmail sorts and filters your email for you. I mean, just little things that you don't even realize that are just in the background that positively influence and impact how efficiently you run through your day every week.
I like it. What about you, Jose? What's your tips for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I install every update that Apple has because my home is now an AI machine. But I think from just a practical sense, like what I use, just for brainstorming, aside from what we build internally for business, for my own personal use, I use like DeepSeek and just explore and experiment running different business models or researching data on things that's pretty complex and obscure, to try to understand things that would take me a long time to find out anyway, and just run some basic models on ideas that come to mind in terms of new products that we want to put together.
Jose, I can imagine. Go ahead, Eric.
What Jose said just reminded me. I'm seeing in the last 2 months, like the deep learning that's available, whether it's through Gemini or through OpenAI, is being able to do research at a master's degree level.
Yeah.
You used to have to hire an MBA to be able to do things that it can now do, but it does it in seconds instead of weeks. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like like I'll periodically post articles or whatever, and I don't let ChatGPT write my article, but I damn sure use it to do all the research and gather everything for me. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can sit down and absorb all this and see what comes to mind. And it's shit that would have taken a week in a library, and it's like 45 seconds later, I'm overwhelmed with information, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Jose, one thing, like, and Eric, both of your thoughts about just the level of analysis you can get. I can imagine from an audience perspective, it's a little, there's also that worry about like sharing your data out to being leveraged by the model. And any just thoughts on that, like, Jose, as you're doing some of that research, is there steps you're taking? Are you using a private instance, or just any thoughts around the security and privacy of data?
It depends on what it is that I'm looking for. I'm looking for pretty general stuff. I do have an installed version on one of my laptops for things that I'm using for things that I don't want to share. But honestly, I'm not overly concerned about that kind of stuff. I think if I was building it for business purposes and I was building a proprietary structure, I might think about it a little bit more. But in the end, I mean, the world is moving so fast right now. I do have a guy on my team who is an AI expert. He's got an MBA from MIT on artificial intelligence. He's incredibly smart, and we had a long discussion about this. He's like, look. He's like, all this stuff's going up anyway. He's like, there's so much masses of data anyway. It's unless you're doing, if it's private banking financial data, then yeah, I'm not gonna put that on some private and public system. But for just day-to-day stuff, modeling, research, I don't really worry about it.
I agree. As long as it's anonymous, I'm not concerned about it. But if there was a concern, you can get a very powerful AI locally that doesn't need to have access to the internet, and it will serve the function.
Eric, you are cutting out just a little bit, but Jeff, you agree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there are so many disparate sets of data. Everybody's going to look at it slightly differently. You still have to put prompts in the AI and set the machine off on a trail. So I think that's where the art kind of comes in, and then the science takes over, because you've got to aim it. And it's like, if you're 2 clicks to the left, a mile down the road, you're 900 yards to the left. So that's where kind of your business intelligence, your insights, your experience, and your adherence to your business model comes in. Is aim it correctly, and you'll get what you're looking for.
All right. Well, we probably talk about the security and privacy side of things all day, but we do have a couple questions from the audience, so I want to make sure we gave time for that. So Quinn asked, how can dealers leverage AI and technology to accelerate the financing process? And as our resident fintech guy, Eric, I'll see what you have to say on that one first.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes it's just helping to provide intelligible information to the customer so they can make an informed business decision, right? So if nothing else, help them understand when it makes sense based on what interest rates and what terms to finance versus pay cash for something. And I think just being able to do that for a customer will help them be more informed and make a better decision on whether or not to A, move forward on a transaction, and B, whether or not to finance it.
Jeff or Jose, do you want to take a stab at that question as well?
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And as far as the actual financing process, how to consume, their information and efficiently get it to the right finance options and hopefully they're using AI to come back and auto-generate responses, because you just go faster. The quicker you give the consumer those bullets and those choices, the quicker they're wrapping their head around, okay, cool, this one fits best. So I think that's where in the finance aspect of it, educating the consumer, I need all this information from you, and as soon as you get it, having the connectivity to put that through the pipeline, whether it's DealerTrack or Route One or whoever it is, or whatever LOS system you're using, to generate a response to empower the consumer to make a decision.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that typically the thing that delays fleet customers more than traditional customers is that they're usually required for more business information.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they take a long time, either they don't have it accessible. I would say the more that you can educate the customer at the beginning to make sure that you can obtain all the necessary documents before you actually sit down and get into the actual financing, you're going to speed the process.
Yeah, help them define their goals, and I think it will help them take action on next steps.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna try one final question that came in, and I'll start off. So the question is around, when it comes to AI, what guardrails or practical recommendations would you make for a dealership looking to implement AI? And just kind of like listening to the panel today, one of my thoughts is look for where AI is offered in services that you already have. Jose, you even joked about your upgrading your latest Apple iOS version, and so what's the panel's thoughts on that? Is that a good step? Like, hey, you probably already have some AI in some of your flows right now that maybe you're not using, or just tools that are available every day without it being some kind of broad new thing a dealership has to take on.
For me, the place to start 100%, whether it's at a dealer or an OEM, even an upfitter, because they're all dealing with the customer, is leveraging the CRM as much as possible. And whoever you're working with for a CRM, challenge them to give you the latest AI features they have, because that's how you're interacting with the customer. And that's gonna make the process easier. I think what Jeff said, spending a lot of time doing research to write an article. It's the same analogy for a customer. You can spend a lot of time reading and studying about the customer when you already have the data right there. So I think that's 100% the place to start for the retail side.
1000% agree. And organizations like yourselves, Kevin, as you guys roll out AI solutions, definitely the customer should be paying attention to that, because you have the data, you help them to develop and cultivate the data, and ultimately with the power of AI, the types of solutions you could provide to these dealerships could be quite impactful.
Yeah.
Hopefully our product team is listening, and we're going to have that new recommendation. So when the lead comes in on a specific vehicle, we can evaluate whether we think it's the right vehicle for that buyer, that business, or whoever. So I like where you're going with that.
The finance side and all of it, yeah, quite literally.
Yeah. Jeff, similar thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I concur. I don't know that I could add a whole lot to that other than I think that's spot on. There's a lot of insights to be gleaned in the data set you already have about your own customers and your own market.
All right. Well, we are getting close to our time here, so I'll just give each of you just a last second. Any final closing thoughts? Is there a good way to wrap up our conversation of how many topics we've touched on? Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, this topic is daunting for most people just because it's moving so fast and it's really hard to keep up with what's going on. But the best thing you can do is just get started. If you can just get started and do even a little bit, it'll become easier and easier and easier to understand. And I think all of the organizations who are at the forefront of this realize that they're also not doing a very good job of helping to clearly define what this latest release is versus that, and that will get better over time. So the worst thing you can do is do nothing. The best thing you do is get started.
Jeff, get started?
Yeah, 100%. Get started. Start cracking a few eggs, make an omelet, learn, iterate. The whole industry is going to advance, and the only way you can advance with it is if you're in the pool.
Jose, I feel like
Yeah.
you can help just keep
Yeah.
that trend going here.
Yeah, I would just say try to keep it simple. I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, AI has many different versions and definitions that everybody wants to assign to it. Keep it simple. Put yourself in the mind of the customer and think about what they would be looking for, and approach it that way.
Well, I love it. And so thanks to all three of you for joining us today. I thought it was a great panel and I really appreciated all your insights. Lots of great auto and technology background here on our panel today. And hopefully the audience, you all walked away with get started. So we'll end it on that. And thanks everybody.
Thank you.